Okay, we can call everything to order, and we do have a quorum, so we can proceed. Everybody got the minutes from last meeting?
Yes.
Any comments, questions, changes?
No, well done, as usual. Thanks.
Okay. So do I hear a motion to accept them?
I so move.
I second.
Second. I say aye. Ginny? Can Ginny hear us?
Is that a hand up there?
Yes, I.
Okay. So moved, so they are accepted. Next item, we have Lindsay Gaboni here, who has sent us a note. She's interested in joining the committee, which is great news. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about why you'd like to join the committee?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lindsay Boney, who, for those of you I haven't met, I'm the director at the preschool. Mom to two young kids here, one at ICS and one at IPS. And I just, through my job, it's come up frequently, like the need for housing. A lot of my employees need housing. People want to move back, they can't find housing. Current employees need housing. And also just being in touch with the needs of families and kind of getting myself deeper into the community. I thought this would be a really interesting committee to join and just try to have a say maybe in what's going on with housing on the island.
And it certainly affects the school in many direct ways.
Well, does anybody have any questions for Lindsay?
No.
Should we tell her what we do?
I would think, I guess we should.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I'm still trying to figure that out, so. So there are a number of housing, organizations, if you would, on the island, IAP, which I think everybody knows about. The housing committee came into existence 5 years, 6 years ago. I know I joined it about 5 years ago, and one of the things we struggled with, especially early on, was how do we not step on the toes of what IAP does? And I think we've been really cognizant of that, and we haven't stepped on the toes. We clearly don't have any kind of funding, so we really are looking to what can we do to promote housing initiatives. And so I guess I would say that we've done a number of things, but the biggest thing was adding to the existing town centers. Tom had done a lot of work on the first group of town centers, and we ended up with the third town center, which was approved a little over a year ago, June of last year. I think it provides the opportunity. It's unfortunate that we haven't seen anything happen as a result of it, but at least we've set the base. I do know there have been a couple of applications to subdivide some land. However, I think it's all been family oriented, so it's within the same family and not spinning it off to sell it for any kind of development. But that would mean that there would be more houses on the island, so that would be good. And one of the things that I'd like to talk about, and I know Tom and I ran into each other a while ago, and we talked a bit about it, is from a policy point of view, what can we do? What can we recommend to the town, to the select board? And that's something I think we really need to think long and hard about, because we do something. Tom, you've been on the committee longer than I have.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that we all appreciate the fact that there is a lack of workforce housing on Islesboro, and IAP has done well to address the affordable housing issue, which puts them under a couple of constraints that they can only offer housing to people at a certain level of median income. And we know that people that are making above the median income are still strapped to find an affordable house on Islesboro. So we've been trying to brainstorm some kind of solutions to help that group of people that make, as a household, they may make $50,000 to $125,000 a year, but you still have a hard time affording housing on Islesboro. So we've been talking about lots of different things, and Peter has suggested several things that he may be willing to talk about tonight. I don't know, including some sort of real estate transfer tax that municipalities have established in different places. Portland, Maine doesn't. And they use those funds to help finance housing. Anyway, we talk about lots of different things like that. And as Michael says, we've established ourselves as a clearinghouse for information to try to get the conversation going between different groups. But we'd like to now try to focus on trying somehow to get the municipality, the town of Islesboro itself, to actually take some concrete steps to solving this problem.
And if I could jump in there for a moment, I did talk to Tom one-on-one about a week ago about this. Part of my campaign platform, if you will, was how deeply and totally committed I am to the idea that the future of Islesboro's sustainability is tied very closely to the availability of housing that is affordable both for people who are below the poverty line and everybody else. And I am committed any way I can as a selectman to support any initiative that would make that process easier, more affordable, and more attractive to future residents. I think it goes to the sustainability of the school, the sustainability of Islesboro economics. It goes fundamentally to the future of Islesboro as a sustainable community as we know it, which I think we're all aware is in jeopardy. So as a selectman, I am new boy on the block. I am ignorant of a lot of things about Islesboro, but I think already it has become clear to me that the program for encouraging new housing and at an affordable level, whether or not it's within IAP's purview or merely because of the town, I am absolutely putty in your hands to advance whatever initiatives we can come up with. Tom referred to two ideas I had, both to ensure that low interest mortgages were available to people who wanted to build houses or buy houses on Islesboro, guaranteed by either the town or the state, which has been utilized very effectively in other communities. And in addition, this idea that we would institute a program in which very wealthy Islesboro residents building new houses would contribute directly to finance less expensive housing. And I know that this has been done in some other communities, and I am determined to see if that is feasible for Islesboro. Anyway, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Peter. So do you have any questions that you?
No, I'm just kind of taking it all in.
Okay.
Very good.
And I think as far as all we have to do is say yes.
Right.
Her suggestion, and the select board then has to appoint her. No.
No, if we accept we can offer Lindsay a position, and I just need to inform them that we have done that, and that was both Shay and Lauren, when she was vice chair, told me that.
But
So-
then they will officially
Yeah,
appoint.
they will do an official kind of a thing, but it doesn't, your name would not need to go for them for approval, so to speak, but
So should I move to accept Lindsay as a member of our committee?
yes.
I so move.
I so second.
All those in favor?
I,
Jenny, we need a
Okay,
verbal from you.
Jenny,
we need a.
We need roll call from
Aye.
everybody.
I from Kate.
aye
Yep.
from Kate, aye Kate.
Aye.
I from
Susan,
Susan.
Aye.
Tom, aye, me, so yes, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
committee.
And
So-
I will do whatever necessary I can as a select board member to support this.
Thank
Great.
you.
The,
Appreciate-
um, preschool is part of the program to make Islesboro sustainable. Very important to all of us.
Absolutely. Okay, so as we move on, the next item was, we talked about a number of things, at the last meeting. We were talking about various pieces of land that were for sale and how they might be able to be used. We have talked about, a little bit about IAP, and IAP has made some great strides, I think, over the last couple of months, and has some very good news for the community coming very shortly, so. And then we also talked about a survey that we would do again. And Susan actually volunteered to do that, and she took a look at what had been done previously. And so we can talk about that. From an IAP perspective, Kate or Susan, if you wanna kind of tell the group where things are standing right now with them.
I feel like Susan's in a strong leadership role. You should do it.
Thanks, but I've been, at this point rather weighed down by being the selection committee and drafting many things. It's great that we'll be able to offer at this time, they're not yet built, but at this time we can offer 6 different houses, apartments or houses to applicants. We have more applicants than we can, and just on Islesmore, more applicants that we can help. And in terms of, I know fairly superficially about how Islesboro affordable properties used to work. And then it was, lower price land that the town provided. It was a lot of sweat equity, and the rents are still very low on those houses. To build new housing, we don't have that same kind of situation in terms we were given land by the Schnur family. But in order to build, I mean, it's so expensive here now. There's so much the amount of construction the last few years here is sort of mind-boggling. And so they've had to hire, we have 2 houses with 3 bedrooms that were prefabricated and coming in, and those clock in at about 500,000. That's a lot of money. And because
On donated land.
on donated land, and because Islesboro Affordable Housing is not a charity, we don't have a nest egg at all. Last year, we broke even at $800. We didn't lose $800, but we have the $800, which in the big picture is practically nothing. So that means that the rents that we charge have to cover the costs. We have to pay the insurance, we have to pay the taxes. For the Schnur cottages, they were built with a grant from Maine Housing, but we still have to pay that back. We have a short grace period, and then we have to start making substantial payments on $100,000. So the rents there they're affordable for a certain level income, but not for the lower, below 50% of the average median income for the county. That's one of the big problems.
Have you actually set the rates for those two houses?
We have a ballpark number, and then we plan to do it on a kind of sliding scale. But some families are just automatically eliminated because they can't pay the bare minimum
Mhm.
that we need to be able to charge to make them to not lose money. Then there are the duplexes, one of which is under construction and hopefully done by the end of the year. That was all done with donated money, but we still have the cost of insurance and all maintenance. And that rent will be lower, but we still need to be sure we have the money to
Yeah,
we can't afford to subsidize anyone, so it makes the decision process even harder because some people are automatically left out. But we're in the process, we're right now ready to decide on, and as you all know, being on the committee, that we need to select the renters and put that forward to the board, and then we can set the rents based on the income.
I, I think that one is kind of a big twixt in between. In that, since it's not using, state or federal money,
Mhm.
that the constraints, specifically the income level constraints are not put on those houses, but at the same time,
We have to
There-
cover our costs.
have to cover the cost, and you want it to be affordable for workforce
Yes,
families, and so it's kind of in between.
yes, it is. And then-
And it's still gonna be an uphill
Became
battle.
quite clear with, not just from casual conversations over the years, but with the applications coming in. There are people who wouldn't be able to afford the duplexes. And that was the impetus for doing another survey of those on Islesboro, and then maybe later off Islesboro, to have the small houses that would cost much less money to build, much less infrastructure. And those could conceivably rent for, $600 a month. But, and so that the survey is to try to find that interest, and just from casually asking people also, would you be interested in this? Many have said yes. I mean, a 1 bedroom or a studio would be ideal for a lot of the working people here. And I think there is a real need, and it might also bring in others from away, from the mainland,
Mhm.
who would be interested in moving here. And I know that Gabe has said there's at least one family that would be interested in moving here if it was affordable for them. And, working at the boatyard. So that is the story, and and then we hope to do, fundraising has continued, we're fundraising, we have some monies already for the next duplexes. And also, I think there's interest in perhaps doing things a bit differently, so it doesn't cost us so much money to build. So duplexes, I think, were scheduled to come in, correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, at 300,000 apiece, something like that, which is still a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And of course, it's always, gets more expensive. Anyone who's done any building, it's like suddenly there's yet another bill that you didn't anticipate. But anyway, it's great that we have this going, like this, and I think if we can have more strategies, so, one of the fantasies is the land by the ferry for the parking lot. Could we have some small houses there, tiny houses? So like studios for single people, a young couple, there's a real need for that. There's quite a few single people working that just don't have the resources for anything else.
Yeah, and I know Barbara has actually put on the table an idea, if you would, of rather than building, buying.
Yes,
So looking at real estate that's for sale, and obviously it's only a small piece of what's for sale.
yeah,
Would it be viable to do that
instead of building.
instead of
Yeah.
building.
Yes.
Because a prefab house is
Mm.
on donated land is $500,000 and,
Yeah, for one
So-
house.
yeah, and so that is an option. Obviously, that would
Yeah.
require more fundraising and
Right.
everything. And that kind of dovetails, Peter, into what you were talking about, which would be a real estate transfer tax. Now, my understanding is Maine statewide already has a real estate transfer tax that would not preclude a municipality from putting their own in. Obviously, you get into affordability and if you have it focused, I guess, on houses that exceed a certain amount, then it would be easier, I guess, to raise the money.
Yeah, you
Well,
can,
I'd like to say I have done zero research into how to do this in Maine. I had experience as a architectural consultant to a town in New Jersey that did this independent of me. I had nothing to do with it. And it worked out very well. And I mentioned that to Tom, and I hope in the coming weeks and months I can research better how to whether this is a feasible idea. It seems to make a lot of sense to me, but what do I know? I would also like to say I've been very deeply involved in that Ferry Road property, both in negotiations with the owner and with the goal of creating some revenue for the town through getting the existing parking that's going on at Ferry Road to pay a fee for the privilege of doing that. I think it's egregious that you park there for free. But that property is not really very it's not very sympathetic to any kind of development. About 75% of it is in the flood zone, and the remaining piece of property is, small and not particularly well located. And, there may be an opportunity down the pike. I have no idea. I've had discussions with the owner about how to work out a deal for the town to acquire this piece of property. But I honestly think, from what I've been told from the engineering firm that works for the town and others, that it's not a very desirable piece of property to develop, even though it looks like it's great. So I'm not putting the kibosh on that. Everything is on the table, but it's a very complicated situation there's a restrictive covenant on the property. It's zoning changes, it's the wetlands, it's the deal negotiating with the current owner. It's kind of a can of worms.
Okay.
I have some information from my conversation with the town of Stonington that might be helpful too for sort of thinking about that option. They shared with me how they're funding their project and sort of what they're considering about it. And I'm happy to share that now or share that later if that's later better.
Let's do it now.
Okay. Also, my understanding is that Maine does not allow real estate transfer taxes at the local level. There was a bill back in 2017 to try and allow that, and it failed. And there was a bill that passed this past spring that creates a graduated real estate transfer tax so that if your home is worth more than $1 million when it's sold, there's a higher tax rate than if it's worth less than $1 million. So it lowered the real estate transfer tax for homes less than $1 million, and it increased the rate for homes above that value. And so that passed, but my understanding is that there's not a local option. There's a lot of local options that are denied at the state level. So you can't do a vacancy fee, you can't do a number of policies yet, unfortunately. However, Town of Stonington they have been putting money into a housing fund just from their general fund. And I don't know what percent of their, like, what amount they put in, or like, if it's like, a certain sort of very small percentage of their annual town budget, but they have been creating a housing fund for the last, let's see if I have in my notes when I created it. I want to say it's been a long time. Um, And then 15 years ago, there was a developer like IAP that was created, and it serves all of Deer Isle. So it's both the town of Stonington and the town of Deer Isle. And they have done a 10 unit and a 12 unit development. And but they also have water and sewer in their village. So they have some resources for density, and Stonington historically had lots of like boarding houses in town where lots of folks would work. They would walk to work and then they would walk home, and they had water and sewer that was actually put in place 100 years ago during some big disease outbreak related to unsafe water. So they have a very old water and sewer treatment system. And they are looking at a new development, maybe within that town center, maybe on another piece of land. But town land was not suitable for the parcel that they're using for the mobile home park. They haven't, but they're not actually as far along in developing that mobile home park as the news coverage made it out to be. So they have a final report coming out with recommendations on how to do it that's coming out at the end of October. So they are using this town housing fund to help create it. And then the ways in which they are subsidizing it is there's either a developer who's going to create a park that they will help make that more affordable by either putting in the roads for the developer, putting in the water and sewer extension, doing some kind of cash subsidy from the fund, or providing the utility hookup. So those are things they're considering doing. And or they might do it with raw lots. So they might end up just creating it on their own, but they haven't decided how they're going to go about creating the public mobile home park for the town yet, or where it's going to go. But they are working with a local developer who has a glamp round, which is not, I mean, I've heard of glamping, but I hadn't heard of glamp round. So they have a 5 unit mobile home park and a glamp round. And one of their big concerns is just water. I didn't realize that Stonington is importing water. They don't have enough from their local aquifer. So during the summer drought, they've been importing water. So water sufficiency is a bigger concern for them than I think it is so far for us. But it's something that they're looking at. So they have a local housing fund. They are working with a developer for most likely for the creation of this mobile home park. And they're going to attach it to their water and sewer, most likely. Although they are looking into, in this report that's going to come out in October, if some of the sort of creative solutions around water and sewer and septic that we were talking about, or others, might allow them to do it on a parcel that's not accessible to the water and sewer that exists in town. So they're looking at that, but no answers yet.
Hey, back to the transfer tax. Does the town, do the towns, municipalities within the state get allocated a piece of that, or does it go?
No, so it goes 10% goes to the county for the administering of the recording of the deeds, and then the rest of it goes to the state.
Okay.
Well,
Um,
like all my best ideas.
Well, there's gotta be something that we
So
can do.
there's a campaign there in terms of trying to pass it at the state level to create the allowance for municipalities to pursue that as a strategy. But as far as I'm aware, it's not currently allowed.
Okay, so would that be something, if we wanted somebody to look at it that we would bring up to our state representatives?
Yeah, I also think the Maine Municipal Association would be an entity to talk with, as well as some of the regional associations that we're part of, whether it's the island communities, whether it's the sort of mid-coast council of governments. But I think there's a few different options in terms of talking with folks about a campaign to pass that at the state level to allow us to have access to that tool.
Do we know roughly how much revenue is generated to the state by this transfer tax?
I bet if I look at the testimony from the hearing that happened in March, I could find it. I'll see if I can find it out.
Is it substantial? I mean, is the state going to argue against this because they don't want to give up the revenue?
Well, this would be in addition to any state real estate transfer tax, right? So anything we would do would be on top of, as opposed to the greatest. So Ginny, I'd be curious about your perspective. The greatest opponents for this have been the realtors.
Yeah, I would imagine. I think I've heard a little bit about this. Yeah, no, we don't want it to be more expensive for people to buy houses. It just makes it harder. Um, but the transfer tax, I mean, to give you some perspective, what I can say is the way you calculate transfer tax is you take the purchase price, divide it by how many 500s go into the purchase price, multiply that by $2.20, and then that is divided equally between the buyer and seller. So what goes to the state would be before it gets split, I guess is your answer. It's not a huge amount. When I talk to people about closing costs, it's not a scary number. So, I mean, a bunch of small numbers adding up over time is a good number for the state. But yeah, I mean, that's what I can share about it.
Yeah, I don't know about the total revenue, but just for an example, it just came up for me that if there was a house sold, a property sold in Maine for $390,000, the transfer tax is $1,700. And the buyer and seller split that. That's the way it's structured in the state of Maine.
Mhm.
Yeah, the way this whole idea was promoted in a couple other communities I was involved with, and I have to research more. It was the lack of staff, gardeners, cleaners, launderers, so on in this very wealthy community that inspired the town to pass this legislation. And it only affected people who were building houses or buying houses for over $1 million or $2 million. It was not in any way designed to tax working class people. And it seemed to me in my, I think, naivete that on Islesboro, if you're building a new house or renovating a house for 10, 15, $20 million and you kicked in $20,000 into this fund, you wouldn't even notice. I mean, you wouldn't care.
So I just did a transfer tax on a $1 million property would be $4,400.
Right. I mean, that's considerably less than most people who are constructing are paying their contractors for ferry fees, ferry. This is the sales tax on the rivets. It's nothing.
Yeah.
The state were to allow municipalities to do it, our municipality could write a statute that had exemptions of whatever we wanted to structure. We could exempt transfers between family members. We could exempt transfers under $1 million. I mean, we could structure it however we wanted to, but the first step would be we need to have the state allow us to do that.
Exactly. And, I absolutely think that we could promote this locally in a way that nobody could object to because it wouldn't affect 80% of the residents of Islesboro.
Yeah. And like, for example, the law that changed at the state level, it exempted people who participate in the first time home buyer program. So those home sales are now exempted from the real estate transfer tax. And so it increased the rate to $400, or sorry, $4 per $500 of home value for the portion of the property's value that's in excess of $1 million. So that's what the change was that exemption. And it looks like the projection is that by 2028, it will raise looks like $6.5 million of general revenue and 6.5 million of special revenue. So that's it statewide.
All right, I do think that that's what we should do. We should, as you suggested, Kay, talk to those regional organizations and our own state representative and start making some noise that we would like to see that the Islesboro would like to see the state allow local municipalities to have a municipal transfer real estate tax.
Peter, do you know who the select board has as the liaison to Maine Municipal Association?
I don't know, we should, I probably do. You know, I'm only, as I said, the new boy on the block, and I immediately got put on 3 or 6 different committees. A little overwhelming, but I absolutely think that is, I mean, this theoretically idea is not going to affect anybody else except a few quite wealthy people on Islesboro who I assume wouldn't care. You know, it's a win-win situation if we can figure out how to do it.
It looks like back in 2015, so not 2017, I was wrong, 2015, that the Maine Municipal Association supported it and the Maine Farm Bureau opposed it and the Maine Association of Realtors opposed it. But
But the
but there
question,
was very little testimony. There's only 8 pieces
I
of
would
testimony.
question whether that bill and the debate or the people who weighed in against it, that was precisely comparable to the situation we have here on Islesboro. Because I frankly, and I may be naive, but I just think that most of the people affected don't care. And if we could raise $1 million or a couple of $1 million in the space of a couple of years, that would be a huge improve. I mean, there's be 3 or 4 new affordable houses on Islesboro. And if the people who are paying into this absolutely wouldn't object, why not? But as I say, I am in the very, very early stages of researching this. And Kate, I'd like to talk to you offline here about your experience, because you obviously know much more than I do about this.
I'd love to talk to you. Yeah. Also, apparently the county commissioners opposed it because they considered it an unfunded mandate to have to oversee the administration of parts of it.
I'll volunteer my time.
Just in terms of what the politics were 10 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I can understand why there would be objections, but I think, and I don't mean to exaggerate the facts behind this, which I'm not confident about, but I think for a certain proportion of people building on Islesboro, this just wouldn't be an issue.
So Peter, in talking to people, Missa Burns was the representative, select board representative at the Mid-Coast Council of Governments.
I think.
And so I don't know if she still is, but might be worth asking
Yeah, I
if
will.
she's can have, and I sit with a couple other residents on the Main Islands Coalition group. And I actually have a meeting with them a week from tomorrow, and I'm happy to bring up this topic there and get input from the other island people about either what they do or where
Exactly.
they're
I
thinking we
know,
go.
I know that the North Haven, Vinyl Haven, Deer Isle, they have all identified affordable housing as a high priority issue.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's something that will be discussed in detail next week, so.
Right.
Michael, I remember at one of the meetings that there was a long discussion about fundraising for housing, but I'm curious if there's been any discussion of if any other municipalities have funds like Stonington. And Stonington's doesn't have a particular designated or dedicated revenue source, but I'm curious if any of the towns do have something. If it's not a real estate transfer tax, do they have something else that they use to fund a
That-
housing fund?
Yeah, that was a topic that was brought up, I think the last meeting was March, April, something like that. However, about half of the people who were at that meeting, Main Islands Coalition is kind of underwritten by the Island Institute, and half of their group left the Island Institute. As a matter of fact, they left the day we had that meeting. So nothing has, I can tell you, nothing has been done because it was brought up again with the person who's sponsoring next week's meeting. So that particular issue, he and his name is Ken something, and I can't remember his last name, but he agreed that he would put it on the topic on the agenda for this coming meeting. So maybe we'll get more out of that. But there are a lot of new people at Island Institute, and so from a Main Islands Coalition perspective, nothing has been done in the last 6 months. So I hope maybe we'll get some action coming out with this revamped group, so don't know, but I'll let you know. Yes. Okay. So Peter, you talked about that piece of land. I heard that, and again, it's just, this is probably more than a rumor, but it isn't something that I could swear by, that Paige Clayson was looking at turning that house that he had up in, that's up on Meadow Pond Road, the one he moved up there.
I see.
He was originally gonna move into it and then he decided not to, and somebody had told me that he was looking to turn that into, I don't wanna call it a dormitory, but rooms for, people who work here. Has anybody heard anything on that?
My husband was working on the building.
Mhm,
And so Paige's plan was to split it down the middle with two kitchens,
mhm.
and essentially like a bedroom in each of them. But then he kind of stopped with the project and he just reapproached my husband last week about starting it up again. But there was no plan just because my husband couldn't get into it until January or February.
Okay,
So I'm not sure what the timeline is for it, but it would house at least
But
two
it's-
individuals or a family.
Right.
I'm not sure what the,
so it's still something that's.
yes,
Okay,
still going. So maybe
So
approaching him about that.
maybe
would
I'll
be-
talk to.
Yeah, the conversations I've had with Paige in the past was that he was trying to find housing for people, for his employees.
Right, I mean, as long as I've known Paige, she's had that, so. I'll look him up and see, if that's something he's really gonna pursue, because
I think last time I talked to him, he said he would pursue that for half of the building. He's kind of scaled back. So it would be half for storage and his business,
Okay.
and then the other half for some kind of housing.
that's still one more than we have today,
Yeah.
so. Okay, thank you.
I've also had a conversation with Mackenzie, with Earl. And he has built a house there on the Northeast Point property. And
Okay,
And he had a couple of, creative ideas. One that there was not a poured foundation. This was on, drilled posts so that you insulate from underneath the house and just stirred it around for appearance sake. But he has invited me to come look at it, and I haven't seen the house itself. I've driven by it. It's, lovely looking house. But it would be interesting to hear him talk about how one can contain costs.
And he's also on IAP,
Uh-huh.
so maybe we could have
yeah,
everybody, this group and IAP get together for a session with him.
He hasn't spoken to the group formally about that.
No, not yet, no, but we know that he's doing that.
Yeah.
And so maybe that could be set up.
okay,
Mhm.
so, all right. We'll invite him to the next meeting, you can talk about that. How's that? Susan said you would show up and, no,
Well, I thought to talk to the rest of the IAP board and us here,
well,
if we could do that, a little mixer.
and I think it's important because, when IAP had their open house,
Yeah,
a month or so ago,
yeah,
there were a number of potential donors who talked about a desire to see the housing committee, IAP, and the town,
mhm,
and IESC came up too. Have, talk together more about housing specifically,
that'd be great.
and so, I think there's a lot of cross pollination
Mhm.
that the conversation goes, but one of the things that we haven't done, to a great degree is to really bring the town into it.
Mhm.
And I think we need probably, that's why I had put this as a policy point of view. Have the town, should have, I think, a policy relative to supporting affordable housing and workforce housing, and I do define those as different things. And IAP is doing a lot for affordable, and we need more for workforce.
Mhm.
It would be a good symbolic, good for optics if the town took a stance somehow.
Mhm.
One other, just peripheral idea, other ways that a transfer tax has been used, the proceeds from transfer tax has been to pay off or to pay for bond expenses. So if there were a pool of money, not too great, that would actually pay the interest on a bond, then the town could structure a bond initiative to build houses. And it would be more attractive because it would be essentially interest-free if there was this other revenue stream to pay for the interest. Anyway, all that sounds interesting to me, but it's all that still is determined by the state allowing municipalities to impose a transfer tax,
Right.
a state tax, transfer of real estate tax.
Okay. Kate, you still there?
I am.
And
No. We talked quite a while ago about the tax increment financing. And I know you did a bunch of work on that. Did we kind of come to the conclusion that that really wouldn't work in our in our community?
I think the challenge is the scale that's needed to make it a sizable enough fund. And so that was the biggest challenge I thought. And I wouldn't say I did a bunch of work. I did some research, but not a ton. But from what I could find, there were no towns as anywhere near as small as us that that had a tax increment financing district.
In reality, in Islesboro, the only way we could do it is to do it in the town centers. And if you think about the new evaluation or the increase in valuation within the town centers over a 10-year span, for instance, that amount is not significant, and the tax generated by that additional valuation is really insignificant.
Okay.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah, it just doesn't scale for us.
right, okay. Peter, would you, and I'm happy to work with you on it, would you take to, the select board, our discussion relative to the town, coming up with a statement of support, at least, if not more, on both affordable and workforce housing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But, you say work.
I'm cautious
Sorry.
by how much of an effect that will have, but
Well,
when I proposed to the chairperson of the select board this idea of transfer tax, she said she didn't know anything about the state law, but she said, "Great idea, you get it approved."
well, how a committee gets formed.
Oh, I wouldn't underestimate how
Well, so
substantial this
Yeah.
challenge.
I think, one of the reasons that it comes up is because I had a potential IAP donor say to me that he and his family had yet to make a donation to the program that IAP had going on, and what he wanted to see was the four entities that I talked about: Housing Committee, IESC, IAP, and the town, work together um, on a housing policy strategy, et cetera. And while I'm not sure we're ready to jump into a housing policy, I think step one would be to get everybody on board with a statement of support. And then you can work from there as to what are the things we can do. We can, have our own little group go after a municipal transfer tax, so to speak, if that's what we want. But I'm sure there are other ideas. And
Had me at the first hello. I am
okay, good.
to try.
No more needs to be said. Thank you.
I do not know how feasible it is. And
Right.
most of these things that I've come to understand end up being a lot more complicated than me and my blissful naivete imagined. But
But
definitely,
my life would definitely support that statement. So, yeah.
I mean,
No.
I think the town ought to recognize that this is a problem for the whole municipality.
And I agree with you. So Susan, you had asked a question about affordable versus work.
Yeah, how are you defining
And
those?
what I would define, and the way that I've kind of approached it, is affordable really can go right down the line with the main housing guidelines. And the income level and rent levels, et cetera. Workforce housing are for those people who make more than that. And when I think about workforce, I think school teachers, electricians, plumbers, the people that basically keep our town going. And by the way, there are fewer of them today than there were a while ago. That group may not be able to meet the main housing guidelines because they might make too much money. but they still aren't gonna be able to pay
Okay.
for the median price of a house on the island. It's still somewhat out of reach.
Okay.
And that's why I define them as two. I mean, there are a lot of places that will just call it workforce housing.
Mhm.
But to me, it kind of loses the actual, the tradespeople, the school teachers, et cetera. So I mean, I'm sure other people have other definitions, but that's how I've been kind of looking at it. Okay. I think we've got a couple of things to think about, a couple of to-dos on that, so unless there's anything else we can.
Well,
uh,
if we wanted to do this, I did a draft of the survey, and I think first up would be the survey for Islesboro Landers. So here's a printed copy, and then Kate, I have a copy for you, but I can email it because Michael.
Yeah.
So you have, okay, so this is essentially is asking the questions of the citizens of listing. For people in Islesboro, what square footage would you prefer after introductory statements about affordable either studio or one bedroom houses? And I should give this to them, of course. And asking, would you prefer 400 to 600 square feet, 600 to 800 square feet, 800 to 1,000 square feet? How many members of the family would there be? What kinds of work do you do? With other people in the household that would be interested in this, do they work? What do they do? And then to get their email, phone number, name. And that way we could find out more of the kind of interest for that. And this dovetails with affordable housing because the thousand affordable properties, because this is, I think the direction that we're gonna need to do after this initial building, because it's leaving out too many people. So is this something that we could do and the town could
Sure.
distribute it?
Yeah.
And then,
Send it to box holders anyway. I mean, that'd
Yeah,
be the
so-
first piece. But
right,
those not living on Islesboro, you're gonna have
that,
one of us.
no, and I would take that on when the time comes. I think the first step is to first get here,
Good.
get that information, and I'd be happy to do it and be at the ferry
Yeah,
as
Just
it
hand them
comes
out up
in
there.
and as they leave to see.
yeah, on the ferry on
House and
Quicksilver.
Hour. Yeah,
Mhm.
I can do that.
Good.
Yeah, you already did that, so that was my turn.
You have to get up early to get all that work.
I get up early, don't worry.
Okay.
And not be afraid of a stampede.
So, and that, and then we'd have to figure out how we would get the, what I didn't include is how we would get their survey back.
All right, so are you asking us if we have any suggested amendments or additions or
Yes,
anything?
yes, yes, yes.
Okay, okay,
Yes,
think
so
about
if
it.
you wanna look at it and then,
Good.
so that's just simple and we get an idea.
Yeah.
And, but then I didn't know how we would get this information back, if it's a paper survey that goes to everybody on the island. How does it get back to us?
They could drop it off the town office. I don't know if we could put a box in the post office. I don't know if they allow that.
Yeah, would that be allowed?
I'm sure we could put a box at the ticket office down there. That would be allowed.
Mhm. So we just have a couple drop off boxes and
Yeah.
then go into the town?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay,
and if, as you've done here, if you keep it short enough, somebody could fill this out on the ferry and be done with it and hand it back to you.
that's what I was thinking also.
Yeah. But yeah, let's think about this if we think any other item or two should be put on
Okay.
it, but I'm with you, it needs to stay as simple as possible.
Yeah,
Susan, could you email an electronic version of this to everybody?
yes, I will.
Thanks.
And the both sides of the draft. Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think that sums that piece. Any comments from anybody? Nothing to add, okay. Next thing would be next meeting. And
We've been shooting for 6 weeks or 2 months or
yeah, it's
something.
been 6 to 8 weeks, other than over the summer, but, so.
So sometime
We can look,
before Thanksgiving.
yeah,
Can we meet sooner rather than later so that maybe we could get the survey in process?
um,
How about October 9th?
Is that too soon? I'd be happy to do that, but,
yeah, October 9th is fine by me.
okay.
October 9th. I'm okay then.
What night of the week is that?
Thursday.
Thursday,
That sounds great.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll be back to the regular 5 o'clock time.
yes. Unless we're asked to change again.
Great.
Okay.
Great, okay.
Okay,
And then if you have any feedback on this.
Yeah, we'll send it to you.
Send it to me and I can, make changes.
Question, do you think we can push this out through constant contact through town? Cause then.
Yeah, and
person
I put it in
who
paper
would do
for
it.
other people,
Yeah.
cause some applicants, you know. Everything's
Actually,
handwritten, couldn't
yeah.
access computers to get the application for the INP housing. So,
But even if people get it twice doing it
right,
through the,
Yes,
yeah, so,
I can do that.
okay, great,
super.
good
I
idea.
mean, that pretty much goes to everybody, so that's great. Okay, so next meeting is October 9th at 5.
I move we adjourn.
And second.
All. I'd say aye.
All right.
Peter,
Well done,
Denise?
Michael. 1
Okay.
hour. That's great.
thank you, everybody.
This is great. Thanks, Al.
Have a good evening. Well.
I will get back in.